Hey there, members of the Night Crew, and folks who just love horror. Welcome to the Night Crew podcast, where shadows breathe and monsters listen. This is the podcast where we get cozy with the creepy, the frightening, and the just plain undead. I'm your host, Brad Ricks. Now, on today's episode, I had the thrill to chat with Edmund Stone. He's the author of such amazing works like Soul Mirror and Tent Revival. We talk about his writing process, his influences, which definitely isn't Lovecraft, and what inspires him. Into the virtual studio we go. All right, so today I'm thrilled to have Edmund Stone joining me today in the virtual studio. Not only is he an awesome author in his own right, but he also did the layout and formatting for the Night Crew 1 and 2. So, Edmund, how are you this evening?
Oh, great, man. Great.
All right. So I know we just got to hang out, what it seems like just a couple days ago. We were both at TBRCon. So
that was weekend.
Yeah. They made the mistake of actually putting our tables next to each other. So
I know. That was a fun time.
There was lots of chatting that happened when we probably should have been selling, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
That's part of it. Exactly.
Amen. All right. So kind of kicking off into things. So tell me a little bit about your writing career. Like, how long have you been writing? What was your first book?
Oh, wow. I mean, I've been technically writing since, seriously writing, trying to get, the short stories, that kind of thing published since about 2016. Years ago, I wrote, just like I would write short stories and things and just put them away and that kind of thing. But I took it seriously 2016 is when I started taking it seriously. I got into some writing courses and did different things. A writing group or two, then started critiquing and doing that kind of thing. My first publication was in 2017, and it was actually two dark poems. Then went from there to short stories, and they had several published. My actual first book was called Hush My Little Baby, and it's still up at Amazon right now. But that book is just a collection of all those short stories and poems between 2017 to about 2019. And I just compiled them all into one book. So that was my first published book right there. After that, I published in the next, I think that was 2019. So 2020, I published another short story collection called Blues, Blood, and Love. And it had some published, some that were never published before. So it had a little bit of both in it. But if we're going there, we fast forward to Tent Revival. That was the biggie. That was my first novel.
And so I got a signed copy of that from you a little while back. I was finally going through some of my TBR pile that, for those watching videos, like right behind me. And so I actually I had read that like a couple weeks ago. So I still need to do my post on Books of Horror about it and, all that. But yeah, so Tent Revival was a fun one.
It was a wild ride. Meant to be like, honestly, a lot of people told me it was read more like a movie than it did a book. And I said, well, there's a good reason for that, because it was meant to be like a campy kind of a thing told by my experience with movies. Probably in the horror genre, like several, I probably have more experience with movies than I do books. I've read multiple books, but the movies are the ones, that kind of jump out there. So Tent Revival, small town, all that going on. And I took elements of like vampire type monsters and zombie type monsters and kind of combined them all to make the creatures that I made in there. I took little bits of cosmic horror, from like The Thing and stuff like, I used to watch a lot of. So, a lot of those different things go in there, and it makes it for more of a, not as much of a down serious type literary novel, but more of a fun ride, kind of novel. So.
Yeah, I definitely, something I realized when I was reading it did have kind of a mix. I mean, there were, what happens with like the sun and that kind of stuff. But then once the revival starts and you meet that main, lady, I can't remember her name right now.
Rebecca.
Thank you. I was like, crap, it's on the tip of my tongue. And it definitely turned and kind of felt more almost like a cosmic horror at that point. It's like she's kind of an otherworldly, godlike creature person. entity.
Yeah. I may have been reading some Lovecraft at that time. I just maybe.
Just maybe, maybe a little bit. Well, that show Lovecraft Country was on, and I was watching.
How can I say?
It happens.
All that's funny. Like, movies and books of all kinds, they kind of bleed into what we do, but that's just part of it. And that's what makes it so exciting, really. That's what makes the horror genre so exciting.
True. So true. So you talk about horror. So why horror?
Why horror? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. When I first started writing and reading, it was horror. And I mean, like back when I was in high school and in college, I mean, it was all horror, sci-fi or comic book type stuff, superheroes, just all that combined. I mean, that was my go-to always. And when I started writing at first, I had kind of gone into the fantasy thing a little bit. I'd read some fantasy novels and I kind of thought maybe, that's where I need to be. I'll do fantasy. That's what I'll do. And, not really thinking about horror as much because, you're talking like between like high school and that point, you're talking like 20 years. So I didn't really, horror was part of it, but it wasn't my main thing at that time. I had a lot of stuff I was watching and reading. So I decided to do fantasy. Well, I did it in my writer's group. I got in there and I threw out some fantasy stories. They just died. I mean, nobody even I knew the writing wasn't great, but at the same time, it was just like nobody got excited about them. They're like, I mean, they didn't say that, but you could tell by the critiques. They were real excited. So I thought to myself, well, that's not hitting. A friend of mine in that group, which you all know him by now, Justin Boot. I mean, he's doing real well now, but back then, we were both just new people. Nobody knew anything about us, didn't have any books out or anything. And he said, have you ever written horror before? Because he was like the main horror writer in that group at that time. And I said, yeah, years ago, quite a few way back, like high school. So yeah, I used to write some horror. I liked it. And he said, have you tried it lately? I said, no, not really. He said, why don't you give it a try and see if you can throw out a short story? And I said, yeah, all right, I'll do it. And I popped it out there. Then next thing you know, I had people like, I love this. I love what you're doing here. I love this part. I love that part. So it just went from there. And I realized that everything, and then even after that, everything I tried to write, it ended up being a horror story. It just seemed to work so much better for me. You just know. When you know, you just know.
Yep, exactly. So I was looking on your Amazon little bio about the author. So it says, horror writer and part-time boat captain. So as an author and a part-time boat captain, how do you find time to write?
Well, glad you asked. No, I mean, I technically... I have a day job as an occupational therapy assistant, so I do that too. But mostly my writing is in the mornings. I get up super early, write for a few hours. Just really, first thing I do is just go in, make coffee, start writing, and then get as many words as I can. That's kind of where I do. That's my little. It's very regimental. I have to do it that way. So I do that. Go to work for the full day, come home, and then I try to throw in a few extra here and there. If I can get a few extra words, fine. If not, then I crash. But now the boat part of it, that's the weekend. And I have a boat and I leave it down parked. I live on where I live, there's a river behind me, the Ohio River. I just sit right off of it. So you walk out to my backyard, there's a few steps that goes down, and then I have a boat sitting out there. So we go boating on the weekend. And that's where the part-time boat captain comes from.
Well, and it's definitely very, very important to have those the little time to decompress.
Yeah,
because especially because I do very similar to what you were saying. I usually get up way earlier than everybody else. Get some coffee, and then I'm at the computer before the sun comes up. And having those times where you can kind of if you kept that regiment 5, 6, 7 days a week, at some point you're just going to start the well is going to run dry. Having something to kind of just break away and be able to just decompress and just, recharge that battery a little bit. It's very, very important.
Absolutely. And my wife just poked her head in here and wanted everyone to remind her that that's her boat, not my boat. So I'm just the captain. That is not my boat.
Sorry, Michael. Yeah, it's her boat. Yes. All right. So tell us a little bit about your writing process. Are you a pantser or a plotter? You 100%. Edit as you go? Do you just, spit something on the page and hope it sounds nice? I mean, what's your, what's your writing process look like?
Yeah. Recently I read Josh Mallerman's book. What's it called? The Watching the Evil Dead. I got it right here. Unearthing the Radiant Artist Within. And what I noticed by Josh's style, we have very similar styles. We're definitely pantsters, 100%. We don't really plot anything out. We just come up with an idea. We might jot it down here somewhere. And then he likes to jot his down on a wall. He just writes them right on the wall. It's very strange. But that's the main idea. And then it goes from there after that. What I do is I typically either I'll write it down on my phone or on my Google Docs. I'll write an idea down and I'll leave it there. Sometimes the idea starts to build. And then the next thing you know, oh, I like that. So I start typing a little more. Now, this is all obviously when I'm already working on another. I have another work in progress already going while I'm doing this. So, but that's where those ideas come from. And then they just build from there. Like I said, I'm a pantster. So what I do is I try to go in, and even if the words aren't really there, I'll still just force it. And a lot of people say not to do that, but it works for me. I'll force it. And then sometimes, I might end up with a page of stuff that's really not even usable. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I get back that when I do the editing process, but sometimes it comes out, and it starts flowing. And then next thing you know, I've got 50, 60,000 words just like that out of nowhere. My biggest thing always is finishing, because I have lots of novels. I probably have, I don't know how many I have right now. I probably have at least 5 in various forms and states. So some are farther ahead than others, but they just sit there waiting for me to jump back. What I'll typically do is right. Like right now, I'm writing a prequel to Tent Revival. So, and that is, that's coming along really nice right now. That one will work. And then, at some point I want to jump back in on another one. But, I got so many, like I said, whenever I stop one, I jump right back in on another. So I'm never in a spot where I'm just sitting there like, I don't have a novel to write. I've always got a novel to write.
Yeah. Always something in the hopper.
Yeah, no, that's just my process. And it's all pantster. I've tried doing the outlining. I've tried doing the note cards. I've tried all that, and it never works. It just, for my ADHD brain, it turns into a jumbled mess, and it never works. So I just start writing.
See, and I'm the opposite way in that, I kind of have to have some good scaffolding, something, to kind of help to kind of give me a little structure to it. Mm-hmm. So as a pantser, then, do you ever find yourself like you get to a point where you've kind of plotted yourself into a corner?
I have done that before, yes. And typically what I do at that point, if I plot myself into a corner, I go right back to the very beginning and I start rewriting. And then I go through chapter by chapter, and then I usually what'll happen is I'll work out the detail where I messed up or what didn't work right, and I'll fix it, and then the rest of it starts working. So that's typically what I do.
You can always do that.
In a way, the outline forms itself as I write.
Gotcha. I was going to say, you could always do what Stephen King said, he did in The Stand, where he had so many characters, you know what to do with them. So he just threw a bomb in the room.
Yeah. Right. Right. And you can do that. You can get into a lot of, like the one I'm doing now. It has a lot of characters in it. And I was noticing at one point, I was getting farther down, and I was noticing, wait a minute, what about these two guys? I mean, what happened to them? And then I was just looking, I went back and I said, well, they were here. Now they're gone. I got to get those guys back in there. I just kind of lost track of them, man. It was just, and they're really good characters, really important to the plot of the story. And I just kind of left them in the dust. So I got to go back and fix them and put them back in there.
See, now if you were a plotter.
Yeah, right. Like I said, I've tried, and it turned. Well, typically my outlines and all that stuff, it turns into a more of a nightmare than it does for me, because my pantster ways get in the way, and then here I am. I got this big blob of I don't know what, and it's just a big mess. And then I got to figure. Then I drive myself crazy trying to figure out what went where and who did what and everything.
Well, I think it was Neil Gaiman that said you write your first draft to learn the story, then write the second draft acting like you knew it all along.
Exactly. I like that. That works. That works well.
All right. So where do you usually find inspiration for your stories?
Gosh. Now, if you're talking like tent revival all around me, tent revival and all that, it was pretty much inspired by where I live, my little town of Garrison and my little town of Vanceburg. Mostly I wrote tent revival. I mean, I didn't, the main character, a lot of the characters that are in there, the different types of characters in the town and stuff were mostly character observations for where I live and what I've seen over the years. And I don't know if I think I said this in an interview one time that the best place to find to do character study is in a McDonald's in the middle of a small town. You can really get into some good stuff there.
Yep. I've sat in, I've sat down at like a Starbucks before and, just sipping on coffee and just kind of watching, just people watching.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for no other reason than just to learn different mannerisms and character traits. And yeah,
that work. It really works. But I think tent revival, actually, I go all the way back to the beginnings of tent revival. It was because I walked into where I work and there was a box in the back by the central supply office, and it just sat there and it had a big thing on the side that said mixed parts. And I saw that and I thought, whoa, mixed parts. I said, what? I wonder if there were like body parts crawling out of there or something. And then
I was going to say, for those who have read Tent Revival, anybody who's read Tent Revival as far as smiling right now as you said that.
So that started with, and honestly, I was starting at that point, I wrote a small short story about the mixed parts. So it was very short and never did see the light of day. But that short story inspired a lot of what tent revival became. And so, that part of that little nugget came in there. And then all of a sudden, here comes where I live, the mine, where my dad worked. All those things, anything you hear in the mine, that mine or any mine I work at, it all comes from probably listening to my dad when I was growing up. He was a mine worker and he told me all the things that happened down below and up and everything. So I learned a lot from him, on that part. But if you put like all those elements together, you put the character studies for the small town, you put the mixed parts in there, you put the mine in there, and then the next thing you know, your mind starts going towards the mythical cosmic creatures, and then you got that part. And so some unassuming person in there, the sage, that was more of a study for me. For like my grandpa was a fire and brimstone Baptist preacher, so that kind of came from that. And other things. I worked with a guy and his name was Sage. So that kind of connected. That's where Sage came from. But the idea of Sage and the way he was completely different from that guy. It was just the name. That was it.
Yeah, interesting.
A lot of elements there.
What about something like Soul Mirror? So I know we haven't talked much about that one. That Soul Mirror, I think, is your latest one, correct? Or do you have one
that's my latest one? That one comes from a real personal place. That comes from my work as a pediatric therapist. I did that for like first 15 years of my OT career. I was a pediatric therapist mostly. I did other stuff too, but I was mostly pediatrics. And going into like clinics and seeing things and the connections there and watching the kids on the spectrum with autism, especially the more profound ones, they really, really fascinated me. They always did. And I was, you always try to find little things that help and like sensory experiences that might work for them, so that they can cope with their world around them. Especially I had kids who were especially like, were nonverbal. Their world seemed so closed in. It was so hard for them to interact. You didn't know what was going on in there. And a lot of people assumed that they had no intelligence, which was not true. I mean, they were extremely intelligent kids. They just couldn't verbalize what was going on.
Right.
So a lot of those, that's where the experiences of Jessica in Soul Mirror comes from. Then I decided, well, we've got her. So what kind of a world would she, like if she were to be nonverbal, have all these problems in the real world, what kind of world would she be if she didn't have those problems? Well, it would be upside down. So that's where the mirror comes from. I thought upside down, looking in the mirror. So that's where that came from. And then from there, it just ballooned into what it is. The occupational therapist, I've had a lot of experience with OTs, obviously, whether, working with them directly, or my wife's an OT as well. So, got a lot of experience there. So a lot of those, a lot of the things in there, the connections with like the autistic parts or the neurodivergence in general, those come from my experiences in the field.
Gotcha. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was also going to say the monster now. I love, always have loved cryptids and cryptid stories. I like the Mothman, and things like that. I've always been about that. So a lot of the cryptid parts of it come from those types of fascinations. And I liked, the book, I think it's The Watchers by A.M. Shine. I read that years ago. And I love that, like in that creature out there looking, but you can't really see the creature, but it's there. And, that kind of an experience where the monster isn't directly in front of you, but it might be behind you, or it might be beside you, or it might just be like in the mirror, that kind of thing. Or in the shadows. So that's where that idea came from. But I think I originally wrote Soul to like I said, the neurodivergent part of it. That's where the character was written first. The character Jessica came first, then the story came around it.
Interesting. So, having read both Tent Revival and Soul Mirror, I mean, I know there's in your writing style itself, there's a big difference between the two. So, like, as how would you say, like, over the the years that your writing process has changed or evolved?
It's definitely changed. I think probably when I was doing Tent Revival, I was more. I really don't know how to explain it, but I was probably looking more of a. I was just like more like I was just like I was writing about where I was and the things around me, to where Soul Mirror, I was actually processing the way I felt, and the when the feelings start to come out, that's when if you can get the feelings on the page, the way I feel is like you've gone to another level. So that's and that's kind of where I feel like Soul Mirror moved up, is I was able to get to get down deep on a personal level and put that in a book. And that is honestly that's always been my goal. So that any book coming right, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at putting it into that, coming from more of a personal level.
Gotcha. All right. So who would you say are your biggest literary influences? Well, outside of like Lovecraft, obviously.
Yeah, I like Lovecraft. I would never call Lovecraft a huge influence, but some. I always did like Lovecraft. If I was going to say like along that lines, it would probably be more Edgar Allan Poe than him. But when I first started reading horror, my first experience was Clive Barker. I was a huge Barker fan. I loved everything he did horror-wise, especially in like the late 80s, early 90s. And some King mixed in there. I wasn't really as big a fan of King back then. I read some of his stuff, but it wasn't like the one that I would go to back then. It was usually Barker. I might have read some Jack Ketchum back then too. I'm not 100% sure about that. Plus, I always kind of like the darker, like the avant-garde kind of different. You could tell they went through a different tune. It wasn't your typical horror. It wasn't your typical trope. It was always really weird, strange stuff. And I kind of gravitated towards that always. That'd probably be more my influence.
Yeah, I need to read more Clive Barker. I've read a couple of his, but it's been like years ago that I did. So yeah, I need to read more Clive Barker.
Oh, his stuff is so good. you can see behind me the poster I've got up there. So I'm definitely Hellraiser. I loved Hellbound Heart. Loved it. And of course, Hellraiser and everything.
Yeah, I think that's what Hellraiser was based on. Yeah. Now, did he also do, was it In the Mouth of Madness? Wasn't that his also? Or am I thinking someone else?
I think that was someone else. I don't remember him doing that. Yeah, now he might have had a short story that was similar to that in the Books of Blood. He had In the Hills. That one, that might be the same one. Think so. I'd have to look that up. I don't think that's Clive Barker. I'm not 100% sure though. Might have to look that up. See if you can find that.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. I'm sure if anybody listening to this will be like, I'm emailing because I know the answer.
Yeah, there you go.
But all right, so I'm going to ask a question. This is one of those pick your favorite kids kind of questions. So, what is the favorite book that you've written?
Wow. No, I'd have to call it Soul Mirror. Soul Mirror is my favorite one. That one is so personal that if I can write another one like that, I'll be extremely happy. That came from a very personal place. I do have another that I'm working on, but I had to table it for a little while because it honestly, I think it got a little more personal than Soul Mirror even. And it had some spots where I won't say I wrote myself into a wall or anything, but I definitely got to a point where it was getting so heavy that I had to back off for a little bit. Take a breath, right? So what I do, I turned around and I jumped in on my prequel, and now it's almost done.
So now you're gonna have to go back to your little wall there.
I know, I'm gonna have to go back. But that there's only two other people that have read that book. My wife and one beta reader, and that's it. And the ending's not done, and she keeps asking me, "Why have you not done the ending?" It's like, because I'm getting there. It's hard, but I'm getting there.
It's like I'm trying to stick the landing.
I know it's a tough one, but I'm going to get it when it comes out. I think people are going to like it, but it was it's a tough one. It's got some heavy stuff in it.
Well, I'm sure we're all looking forward to that one then. All right. So this is a funny question I decided to add today as I was reviewing different questions I ask. So do you read your book reviews? And if so, how do you handle the negative ones?
I do read them. I do read them. The negative ones, I don't know. I handle them fine. I just laugh at them usually. I remember, with Tent Revival, I got my first 1 star. And it really was kind of because you know how most 1 stars did not finish, that kind of thing. And
right,
they said I almost did not finish, but since it was in the brawl, I went ahead and stuck it out. And I said, well, it might be a 1 star, but at least they finished it. So, there you go. But I take them light. I honestly, I don't care. If I get 1 star reviews, I only put that one out there because, that was my first. Honestly, 1 star, 3 star, 5, I love the 5 star, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, I got big, broad shoulders. I know people have different styles and they do what they do. But when you hear a really, really, really good one, like somebody who read the book and they got it, man, they nailed it. They really got it. Those are the ones I really like.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the same way. Like, I know not everyone is going to like everything that they read or, the stuff that, that I write it's just like, movie wise, same kind of thing. Like I know a lot of people, who enjoyed the movie Weapons. I didn't really like it. And so it's just, everybody has
spoilers. I haven't watched it yet.
I'm not giving you spoilers. I'm just saying it wasn't my favorite. And like, I watched it and I was like, but I know other people rave about it. And so and so same thing on books. You have people who one person may read a book. I know I have some reviews of like Fear Not the Dead, for instance. People are like, oh my God, it was such a great psychological thriller. And, and then I have other people is like, give like a 2 star and they're like, it was, I'm like,
yeah, right.
Everybody's got different takes.
That's right.
I think some of my favorites are the ones that when they're like, just accolades on top of accolades. And then they're like, 3 stars. I'm like, what in the world? What?
I got one of those.
What does it take to get a 5 star with you?
I got one of those. I think it was from NetGalley, and I got one on Soul Mirror, and they said that they were like, put in it's a great review. Talked about
it's
how
a great review, and it's like
recommend
3 stars.
it. Well, all this 3 stars. I'm like, I was the same way. I'm like, what? You just gave it a 5-star review and only 3 stars. I don't even understand.
Yeah, I was like, you just laud it all over the book about how great and wonderful it is, and you just, I think I had one of those for like Night Crew. They were like, but it's the vampires I've always wanted, and Twilight can kiss my ass, and all this kind of stuff, and then they're like 3 stars. I'm like, what?
Yeah, those are the ones that make you scratch your head. That's for sure.
All right, so here's an interesting question. So, what scares you, and how does that inspire your writing?
Well, you're talking about
evil laughs as I ask.
Yeah. Very, very little scares me, really, honestly. But it would definitely be the more personal things, like something happening to my family or something like that. That's what would scare me. I worry about my kids all the time. I worry about my family all the time. Those kinds of things. That's what probably scares me the most. But if we're talking like, I have had times when I wake up in the middle of the night, had a strange dream about something crawling out from under the bed. I had this happen not long ago, and I went to use the bathroom. When I came back, I thought that it was there, and I leaped 2 feet from the edge of the bed to the bed because I wasn't going to go up near that bed because there's something under there.
Was Michael like, what the hell was that?
Yeah, she was like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm good. Go sleep.
Oh, that's funny. All right. So I started the Night Crew podcast as a spinoff of my own series, The Night Crew, which is about a team of monster hunters. All of my scripted episodes are deep dives into some kind of a creature. And so with that being said, one of the caveats of coming on the podcast is you've got to talk about your favorite monster. So what, Edmund Stone, is your favorite horror creature?
Wow. Gosh, there's so many. Thinking about that one for a minute. I mean, probably something Kraken-ish would be because Rebecca, that's what she is. So something along that line, something like that's alien that can shapeshift and do all kinds of things like that, but can run a tentacle out and grab you by the neck or run it through your middle or kind of like aliens, that kind of thing. That's what I like. I love those kind of monsters because they're so unpredictable. You just never know what they're going to do. It's not like a vampire where kind of as long as it's following the tropes like a normal vampire. You know what's coming. But with a creature that crawls out from the depths like a Cthulhu type creature or some kind of Kraken-ish creature, I mean, it could stomp on you. It could throw a tentacle through you. It could rip your head off. It could chomp. I mean, there's just 100 ways. It's just got complete dominion over you. There's really nowhere you can go with it. So those kind of creatures are the ones I like.
So it's funny when you say Kraken. So for me, growing up as a kid of the 80s and 90s, the first thing that comes to mind is that what was the old crap? The name just escaped me. That old movie, with the Medusa and Perseus.
Wasn't Jason and the Argonauts or something like that? Was one of them.
Yeah, what was it? It was
the one with the little funny owl,
the little
mechanical owl. Oh yeah, that was what's that called? I know the one you're talking about, and it's kind of like the ones they've done recently. With what's the one?
Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, there it is. Clash of the Titans. That was right on the tip of my tongue. I was thinking Titans. So yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So anytime I hear Kraken, that's the first thing usually comes to my mind is Clash of the Titans when it comes out of the water and
yeah. That's it. There you go, right there. That's the kind of thing that probably because every time I think of water, I think of that and also being on the water and something coming up. I mean even Jaws to a degree scared me back when I was a kid because that was kind of a Kraken too. I mean it just come out of the water out of the deep and you didn't see it coming, that kind of thing.
And it's so persistent and just keeps coming and keeps coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. When, not with 3 barrels, he can't.
That's right. We need a bigger boat.
So it's funny because earlier we talk about influence and you're like, well, Lovecraft stuff is fine. And then your favorite creature, you're like, yep, it's going to be Cthulhu.
I know. Yeah, well, okay, whatever. I just told him myself, didn't I?
He was like, Lovecraft is okay. By the way, I love his creatures.
Right. I know. Yeah, it's whatever. Shout out to old HP.
All right. So I guess, so outside of writing, what are some of your hobbies?
Well, obviously boating.
Obviously the boating. Yep, we got to that. But
I like to paddleboard and stuff like that. Probably, I do. I'm kind of on again, off again with art. Used to, I was really big on character art, and I would draw sketches and all these different things. But I've kind of gotten away from that. Where with the writing, I just do so much of it that now it's kind of a lot of those things have been put on the back burner. But I would call that a hobby because I'll pick it up again now and then. So probably, sketching, that kind of drawing. And I read a lot. Probably, I love to read and walk. I have a certain time of the day when I'm at my day job, and I'll just put my headphones on and I'll take off and take a walk, but I'm always listening to a book during that time, so that kind of helps. That makes things nice. But my biggest hobby obviously is on the waters. Well, that's where you're gonna find me if you're talking a real hobby.
So you're definitely a fish, huh?
I am scared to death of the Kraken in the water, but love to be in it.
I was about to, make that little comparison as well. It'd be like, for, like, creatures that my favorite ones are the ones in the water, and I like being on the water.
Exactly. Fear. I love the fear.
He's a horror author that just lives in the fear.
You got it.
So what advice do you have for aspiring or new authors?
Well, be persistent. Be persistent. That is probably the biggest piece of advice. If you don't like what you're writing today, 9 times out of 10, a year from now, you will like it. So be persistent, stick with it. Don't give up. Don't think that, the first few things you write are, oh, it's awful. This is too hard. This is that. I mean, all those things go through your head. We've all been there. Set yourself a goal of a time, whether it be word count, time, writing, whatever, and stick with it and do not veer from it. If you find yourself, maybe one week you did veer from it, next week jump right back on, but be persistent. I think if anything else, I would say be persistent, because the more you write, then it's just like anything, it's like an athlete, there's often, they say that, an athlete works hard to train muscles to do certain things. We work hard to train our brain to do certain things. So it's the same thing.
And if I recall, I think we were talking a little bit about this at TBRCon too. But yeah, it's that, it is a muscle. And if you can set yourself that time, then every day you're going and you're training yourself. It's that almost Pavlovian that you're getting yourself into that rhythm. It's a muscle that you're training, and you're building that muscle memory with every time you're sitting down in front of the keyboard that, hey, this is the time, and eventually your brain will kind of, it'll kick into gear. Sometimes it's like lawnmower. Sometimes it takes it a couple of tries before that mower gets going, and then sometimes
those are the good times when it really starts kicking. And next thing you know, you look down. Oh my gosh, I got 2,000 words. Oh my gosh, I'm going to 3,000. Wow. Then you're just like going on.
There are so many times like I feel like I'm just like banging on the keyboard. I'm like, yeah, we got this. I look up and I'm like, I've written 150 words.
And then
I've done that and then other days, like you're just typing away and it's like 1,500 has just passed by. And
you don't even know where it's coming from.
Right.
I know,
you just get into that like zone, and it's just you're there and you're just riding away. And I've heard it called the flow before, where you're just kind of in the flow and things are just passing right through. And it's
that's very, very accurate right there. That's definitely accurate.
Let me see. Go through my little list of questions here. Oh, here's a good one. If you could pick someone to do a collaboration with, who would it be?
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of people. I don't know, maybe Brad Ricks. I don't know, it's possible.
You don't have to say me just because you're looking at a camera at me.
Now are we talking like literary heroes from the past that I had, that kind of thing?
We can pick that and a current indie author or somebody that you know.
All right. I don't know if we could actually do it, but I've also always wanted to do a collab with Ben Young, but we've sort of done that with our latest book with the Hurt People, but that wasn't a true collab. That was more like, one story feeds off the other.
Right. Yep.
Not like, I do a chapter, you do a chapter, that kind of thing. And we've discussed that before, but we've just never been able to pinpoint a time to do it. It's tough. Now I'm doing a Try Not to Die book, and Mark Tolios will probably be collabing with me on some of that because, trying to give it to mostly the kill scenes and kind of make sure all the structure works. So that'll probably be, that'll be a collab, I'm sure. I've only done one other collaboration, and that was with Patrick Ruman, the owner of Wicked House Publishing. Yep. And that was before he had Wicked House. We were both self-published authors then, and we did it was actually published like about 6 months before Tent Revival, but we did a collab called The Little Runaway. That's what it's called. And it's more of a YA kind of story, which really surprised me because I'd never done a YA story before that. But the two of us collabed on that, and I thought it turned out pretty good. It got good reviews and everything, but It's still floating around out there. So
I'll have to check that one out.
yeah, check it out. Yeah, it's called The Little Runaway. I think he's collabing with one of his authors now, maybe Andrew Nyberg. I'm not sure. I think they got something going on.
Yeah, they're working on a zombie apocalypse kind of thing, if I recall.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, both great guys. So I'm sure that'll turn out really good.
Yeah. All right. So where can my listeners learn more about you? Now, I guess so I know you also have your little group on your group on Facebook. I say little group. So I hope y'all don't give me hate mail that I said your little group on
Well,
Facebook.
they are a little group. No, but they're
small
they're
but
a
mighty
group, but they're dedicated. They're a dedicated group. How about that?
So talk about your group on Facebook.
Okay. Well, I'm going to show you the sticker. There's Edmund Stoners. That's the group. Nice little setup there.
The Stoners.
The Stoners. That little group came from the first Books and Brews. I came in there, and a couple of the people on there, a couple of my people that were there to see me, they were talking about it and stuff. Well, one of them was I think it was Mary Triuo. I think is how you say her name. Anyway, she her daughter had said something about hey, Edmund Stone, wouldn't that be the Stoners? And she told me that, and I was like, whoa, wait, what did you just say? And
like,
they said,
well, that just
Stoners,
stuck.
and I said, the Edmund Stoners. I said, oh my God, that's great, and then just went from there, and it started growing. But now I've got people, they'll say the Stoners forever, Stoners unite, things like that. But it's fun. We have a blast with that. But yeah, that's where that all started. And then I started the Facebook group, and we got the group page. And I mean, who knows where it'll go? Like I said, it's a small group, but a dedicated group. So they're good people.
I know, because like at Books and Brews this past year, y'all had a little meetup and everything. So yeah.
Sure did. Yeah, it was great. Took pictures and had a little freebies for them. It was great.
Awesome. All right. So obviously there's the Stoners group. So where else can people learn more about Edmund Stone?
You can go to my website, edmundstonehorror.com. All my books are on there. There's a place to find Stoner merc. You can find that there. So also a place where you can join my newsletter there. Amazon.com. You go there, you can find everything. Crystal Lake Publishing. You can find me on their catalog. And let's see. Sometimes I'm at like bookstores because I'm like on Ingram, so you'll find me at independent bookstores. I've been in a couple Barnes and Noble here and there. So, but Amazon.com and EdmundStoneHorror.com. That's probably gonna be your best bet.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and I'll make sure and get all those links and stuff from you, so that way they can be in the show notes, and it'd be nice and easy for people to find and click on.
All right.
So,
sounds good.
Any lasting words of wisdom before we sign off for the evening?
Lasting words of wisdom. Don't get a table next to Brad Ricks. No, I'm kidding.
Well, but poor Edmund, he had on both sides. He had Ben Young on one side and myself on the other. I mean, I don't know who did that table arrangements, but
it was
they just stacked us up there.
It was a good time though. I mean, we have to say it was a good time. I love those conventions anyway. We have so much fun. I mean, like AuthorCon, same way. They're just all like, especially when you're all like together there in that corner and you can't go anywhere, kind of stuck. You think, well, I need to go. And then like, oh no, here comes some people. All right. Well, Brad's going to talk to them. Then they're going to send them to me. I'm going to listen. Okay.
And I know it's so bad at those conventions, because like you don't ever know. And so like, even if like I'll like, okay, I gotta go use the restroom, and I'm like looking around, I'm like, am I gonna miss out on sales for the 3 minutes that I'm in the restroom? I was like,
I know. You get like that. I've done it for so many times, and I kind of feel the same way. Ben always tells me, he's like, well, yeah, but you're always like, the very first convention I went to was AuthorCon, very first AuthorCon. That was about 3 years ago, and I went there, and I was in a crappy spot. I was down in the basement, and I wasn't getting any table traffic, so I looked at all the panels and said, man, there's some cool panels here. So I just left, and I put a little thing, I'll be back later, and I went to panel after panel, hardly ever at my table. And an author friend of mine, he was looking for my table. He found my table. He came down, and I wasn't there. So he's, oh, well, he's not there. I'll just come back later. Comes back later, and I'm not there. And he messaged me. He said, dude, do you ever stay at your table? I can't find you. And I'm like, well, No, not really. So from there on, I've been like paranoid about staying at my table because everybody's missing me. So, I know.
So what are the next events that you're doing? Where can people find you?
Right now, I've got a couple of local things, but they're just like right here within the community, mostly like public libraries. I've got Lewis County Library, October 30th. May have a spot at the Scioto County Library, which is right across the river here. But the bigger conventions, my next one is Dark Drafts in Mount George.
January.
I'm sure you'll be there too.
Yep, I'll be there also. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, it's a blast. I love that one. But yeah, I'll be there. And then after that, I'll be at AuthorCon again. And then I've got a few here and there that I'm interested in, but don't know how that's going to go. I usually just make my schedule up as I go along and opportunities come up and I grab one. But those two for sure. Those two are already locked in.
Awesome.
So Dark Drafts and then AuthorCon.
All right. Well, I'll put all your links and stuff in the show notes. Other than that, it's been a blast chatting with you today. So I appreciate hanging out with me for a little bit and talking all about Edmund Stone.
Night Crew.
Oh, you're wearing my little shirt.
Ripping, buddy. Ripping.
Awesome. Yeah, I saw your picture on Facebook earlier with it on. I do appreciate that. Yeah, for those of you listening, I did make T-shirts for the Night Crew podcast. Haven't put them on my website yet because I have some local events that I'm doing. I'm like, I got to make sure and have merch just in case. But once these are all done, then I'm definitely gonna have some T-shirts on my website if anybody wants to buy a T-shirt.
Awesome shirts, good quality.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, so like I said, with that, I will. I'll bid you adieu, and I again appreciate you hanging out with me for a little bit.
All right, same here. Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. That's it for the Night Crew podcast and my conversation with Edmund Stone. I have links to where you can find Edmund in the show notes. Follow him on all the socials and pick up his books. So if you had a good time, make sure to follow the show, share it with a friend, and leave a rating. Hopefully 5 stars. If you want updates on my writing, you can follow me on Facebook or TikTok at Bradrick's Author. You can find copies of my novels wherever you like to buy books. But if you hop over to my website, bradricks.com, you can purchase signed copies of any of my novels. While there, also sign up for my newsletter. Remember, The Night Crew Book 1 is currently available and Book 2 comes out November 14th. I'm Brad Ricks, reminding you to stay out of graveyards after dark, question people who don't show up in mirrors, and just admit it. You love you some H.P. Lovecraft. It's okay. Until next time, keep your curtains drawn, your sense of humor sharp, and your blood inside your body. Thanks for listening.